Welcome to the Bright Side once again. As most of you guys know, one of the key ideas, maybe the key idea of what I call the Bright Side philosophy is the notion that the gut, the digestive tract, especially the intestine, is the core of the body, and it's the nexus of health and disease. So it's with great excitement that I want to welcome our guest today. We have him on for the whole hour. This is a guy who not only lives this idea in his life personally, not only has he used this idea in his own life and chronicled his successes and his personal journey from sickness to health in several books. He's also, by virtue of his insight and his passion, become an articulate and tireless advocate for health, a spokesperson through his books and presentations and formulated products as well, for the idea that we can heal ourselves without drugs, without medicines, without the medical model at all. And not only does he preach the word about the power of nutrition and digestion, these days he's actually in the business of producing healthy foods, literally from the ground up, from the grass up, if you will. But as well-versed as he is and informed as he is about the processes of digestion, assimilation, how it relates to health and disease, even more fundamentally, he's hip to the power of what we call on the bright side the divine force and the divine intelligence. He's the author of numerous books, including Live Beyond Organic, Patient Heal Thyself, Restoring Your Digestive Health, The Great Physician's RX for Health and Wellness, The Maker's Diet, and now The Maker's Diet Workbook. He believes we all have a divine right to live healthfully and abundantly, and he's on a mission to improve the health of Americans and to change the way we think about food and digestion. Please welcome to the bright side my friend and colleague, Dr. Jordan Rubin. What is up, Jordan? Good to talk to you, buddy.
Hey, Ben. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the bright side. So it's one thing to love the body and biology and to have a kind of theoretical grasp, a theoretical understanding of how the whole system works. But when you have a personal experience with the healing and renewing power of the divine force through the medium of the body, through lifestyle choices, through nutritional supplementation and foods, that gives you a whole different perspective. And many people have heard your story or read your story of how you use these ideas in your personal life. But for those who haven't, I wonder if you could start off by giving us a short synopsis of your background and biography, how you got involved in these ideas, and how they personally affected you in your life.
Absolutely. While I grew up the child of what I describe as hippie health nut parents, my dad went to naturopathic university, later became a chiropractor. We definitely ate differently and lived differently than most people. I still suffered from the ravages of disease as a late teenager. And this was in spite of avoiding a lot of sugars, not being vaccinated, but one ill-advised vaccine when I was a teenager, did not take antibiotics very often at all. I still managed to find myself stressed out, eating the wrong foods, and living a lifestyle that wasn't conducive to health in college. And as a result, combined with probably some genetic predisposition, I suffered from the ravages of Crohn's colitis, inflammatory disease of the bowel, which led to 17 other illnesses, including diabetes. I had chronic fatigue. I was dealing with parasitic, fungal, bacterial, viral infections. I had liver problems, kidney problems, urinary tract and prostate infections. You name it, I had it. But most distressing was a weight loss. It really put me in a situation of muscle wasting that saw me go from 185 pounds at 6 feet tall to 104 pounds in a wheelchair.
Oh my God.
And for 2 years, despite visiting 69 medical experts, conventional, which failed, alternative, which also in many cases failed, I was worse than when I started, in a wheelchair, fighting for my life. And that's when I learned how to rebuild the body, I would like to call it the old-fashioned way.
And how'd you come up? Did you read a book? Did you meet somebody? How did this transpire?
Well, not only did I read a book, I read 300 books. I counted at one point. It was right around 300 health books. And because my dad was fairly well connected, that's how I visited all these doctors. You look at some of the best-selling health authors of the last decades. I was their personal patient. I received copies of their manuscript prior to publication. I was finding the best of the best, and it still didn't work. I traveled to Germany, Mexico, saw doctors from England and Canada. Nothing worked. I was always called the worst case of Crohn's disease. I was told I had the worst case of Candida, the worst viral load, you name it. And ultimately, when we were really seeking a surgical procedure that at the time was on the experimental side, doing a not only total colectomy, which was removal of the colon, but also some of the small intestine. It was going to be a real mess. But right before that, I met a man by telephone in Southern California, and he said to me, Jordan, you can be well if you follow a health plan that's based on the Bible, proven through history, and confirmed by science. Now, Ben, I was a man of faith. That was the most important part of my life, certainly. I can't tell you I was smiling while chained to my bathroom and my bed for 2 years other than visiting doctors. I have horror stories galore, but I knew that God created me for a purpose, and it wasn't to suffer and die. So I clinged to this hope, and in a 40-day period, going from Florida, where I grew up, to Southern California, where this man I'll call an eccentric nutritionist lived, I learned the secrets from the Bible, history, and science, and was able to go on a 40-day health program that saw me go from death to life, sickness to health, and some have said from mess to messenger. And that's very much the same message that I'm sharing 19 years later, having overcome an incurable disease that's called incurable for a reason, but having been blessed to see thousands follow in my footsteps, not just due to the nutritional information, but really, Ben, I think the hope that I have been able to provide people, not because I'm smart, not because I have learned a lot, but because I had the faith to have my mom take my picture when I was at my worst. And that before photo,
I love that
giving
picture.
people the hope that if this guy can do it, who's worse than me, I can do it as well. And my goal was to become the first doctor that I would have been able to see instead of the 70th to get me well, and that's been my goal. I really believe we need a healthcare model that involves empathy, not just sympathy, and certainly not just degrees hanging on a wall. And if there's one thing that I would say is the best characteristic that I've developed over the years, Ben, it's really the understanding of what it's like to suffer, and more importantly, what it takes to get well.
Well, you know, that picture that you have on the book, on Patient Heal Thyself, right on the cover of that book, that's what that says, is that this is, and you got both pictures, you got pictures before and after, and it says that this is a man who's actually lived sickness and lived disease and figured out how to take care of it himself without doctors and without drugs, like we talk about on The Bright Side every day. Thanks so much, Jordan. Hang tight. We got to take a break. Got some more stuff I want to talk about. I want to talk about what some of these doctors were telling you when we come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening. I am Pharmacist Ben. Thanks for joining us today. We're talking to Dr. Jordan Rubin about his multiple books and about his message of health and wellness that is linked to the digestive system. Jordan, I want you to talk a little bit, before we get into a couple other things, the books and the foods, I want you to talk just briefly about some of the things that the doctors were giving you, these brilliant medical physicians that you were visiting. What were some of the so-called treatments and cures, and the especially the radical ones or the unusual ones that they were trying to get you to do?
Well, the medical treatments will be looked back in history, I'm sure, in the next 100 years as absolutely barbaric. I think the model of cutting, burning, and poisoning is definitely had its day. For me, the medical protocols were pretty standard. Very high anti-inflammatories in the form of prednisone, amounts that are 80, 90 milligrams. I was on prednisone for 18 months. It didn't help me, and it really caused me a lot of problems trying to come off of it. And there's various combinations of antibiotics, antiparasitics, and then they'll use various chemotherapeutic medications like 6-mercaptopurine, et cetera. Now, then I was ill before the biological treatments were out, what you would call the Humiras of the world. So I didn't get into those, and those are being used very often for things like plaque psoriasis, like rheumatoid arthritis, et cetera. So the tumor necrosis factor, beta, trying to lower the TNF-A, blah-blah-blah. So none of that worked, and they really caused more problems than good. I remember a couple of times coming out of the hospital from using IV hydrocortisone and going to oral prednisone and having some serious hallucinations, which I never encountered before in any scenario, and just some real challenges with the overall system. And not only that, it's really amazing how you can go into the hospital and end up so much more ill than when you came out. I remember getting what you'd call an upper GI series, also called a barium swallow, just to see if there were any blockages in my gut. And it took 28 hours to get the barium through my system, and barium itself is not good to ingest. But I couldn't drink water, and so I had to consume ice chips. And I did really badly in the hospital, really badly when I got out. And it turns out that a routine health inspection showed that the ice in that particular hospital was contaminated with cryptosporidium, which is a protozoa. And so it's kind of, it's kicking a man while he's down in the least.
That's amazing.
And Ben, the weird and wild treatments really involved natural or alternative medicine. I remember one time working with a guy who used the best way to describe it is it's a biofeedback / electroacupuncture machine. So you hold on to certain charged metals, and they would determine various sensitivities you had, how your organs worked. I was very ill, had a high fever, but I still said, Mom, you got to drive me to this guy. And it was across the state of Florida. And I was really excited because just like everyone I went to, people come from all over the world to get healed by this guy. And anyway, I got there, and he was looking at my screen while I'm sitting there doing anything but smiling with 104 fever, lots of pain, etc. And he said, Jordan, I think I know what's wrong with you. He said, you are sensitive to a satellite that orbits the Earth once every 70 years.
That's
and
great.
I said, well, boy, I was kind of hoping for gluten or dairy. And then he said, if you sleep with a 3x5 note card with a purple square in the middle of it, under
You're making this up. Come on, Jordan.
Well, no, that's not even the weird stuff. You know, desperate times require desperate measures. I took unlabeled herbs from a guy who later claimed he did interplanetary travel. So look, Venus flytrap infusions in Germany was probably the most normal thing, and it led to catheter infections and massive use of tincture of opium. So I ended up in Germany, can't speak the language, with a sleep 20 hours a day, and the remaining 4, the only American channel at the time, this will kind of date me, was a 24/7 coverage of the OJ trial. I mean, that was my life, Ben.
Wow.
I mean, I should be more grateful knowing what I've been through, but I tried hundreds of products, dozens of treatments, and what really worked was the most simple approach of all. Now, while I loaded my body up with probiotics during my illness, they never seemed to work. I took them in every orifice. I took bottles a day. But there were certain keys that I realized from studying the Bible and history that were missing, and one of which is the nutritional and other components found in healthy soil, and getting ourselves back to that, understanding, yes, that the gut is the root system of the body, and all disease and all health emanate from it. And then really understanding that healthy fats are incredible for you, not just so-called omega-3 fats, but saturated fats. And I began to consume foods that were highly dense in nutrition.
Wow.
Very little supplementation, although I would add that later. And in fact, one of the early supplements that I used that ultimately became the first supplement that I ever formulated, it was a compound. It had in it beneficial microorganisms and approximately 70-plus elements from the earth. And that's really the very same, I would say, framework for which the Youngevity products were created. And so there's a lot of commonality between my story and Dr. Wallach's discovery. And it isn't about taking mega minerals. It's about getting what we are missing from our food supply. The Bible says we're created from the dust of the earth, and from the dust of the earth we shall return. And so basically, I ate healthy, raw, and organic foods and dirt. Pretty much did it.
Yeah, you tell a story, an interesting story. I think it's in the Maker's Diet, actually. I don't remember which book. I think it was the Maker's Diet, where you talk about how your dad sent you a plastic bag of dirt.
Yeah, isn't that great? I told my dad I was tired of supplements. I'm in California, and I said I don't want supplements anymore. And he didn't listen to me, and I'm glad he didn't. And he sent me this dark substance, and it was a probiotic, and I'd already used 30 probiotics. I didn't want to have anything to do with it, but for whatever reason, I did it, and I stuck with it. I actually felt worse in the beginning as my body endured some cleansing, but ultimately on the 40th day, I had a significant improvement. And so the combination of these unique probiotics, which were very little talked about back in the day, probiotics were not a popular term, that combined with certain dairy products, certain animal foods, certainly vegetable juices, fruits, etc., was able to bring me back. And in one period of time, I gained 29 pounds in 40 days. I was so emaciated. And the man that I went to California to seek help from told me that if I listen to him and follow the Bible's plan, I'll be working out on the beach 120 days from that point. And you know what, Ben? I was. And
That's
I think
awesome.
It's powerful to believe. And I learned the importance of faith. I left Florida sick, and I told my mom for the first time in 2 years, I'm going to get well. And it was an amazing period where I could focus solely on my health in body, mind, and spirit. And I knew then that I had a greater purpose on this earth. And that's what I've been trying to disseminate, trying to motivate people that what they do today very much determines who they'll be tomorrow.
That's awesome. So you're I can tell you're on a mission just from talking to you, but through your books and through your interviews and presentations on the internet, it's clear that you're on a mission. Sum up your mission in one sentence, especially to people who feel frustrated or sick or who have just basically given up on health and have abdicated their responsibility and just said, "Hey, doctor, take care of me. Cut out whatever you need to cut out. Give me whatever drugs you need to give me." What's your message to those guys and in terms of your mission in life?
Sure. Well, first of all, I believe your pain has a purpose, and I believe that the depth of your pain will equal the height of your platform. But my personal mission, and it has been the same for 18, 19 years, is to transform the health of this nation and world one life at a time. And hopefully someone listening today is that one life, because it's such a blessing to see somebody conquer disease.
That's awesome. Well said, Jordan. Okay, so now you're in the food business, and I want to talk about some of the really very fascinating things that you're doing with dairy and with cattle in terms of our food supply. We'll do that when we come back from our break. I am Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. We're talking to Dr. Jordan Rubin. We'll be back right after this. An amazing story. Jordan, now that we've covered your amazing past, let's talk about the amazing present and the amazing future. You're now in the food business, and you're doing some really interesting things. Share with our listeners some of the things that you're doing on your place in Missouri.
Absolutely. Interesting. Just about begins to sum it up. When I was sick in Southern California, Ben, I was there during that period, as I talked about, that I would later call the Maker's Diet 40-day health experience, and I became very dependent on a certain type of dairy product. It was a cultured dairy known as kefir, and I had certainly tried it before, used it before. It was really in the infancy of kefir and its development in the U.S., and so I had to get a special type of kefir, but it was hard to find on the shelf, and for whatever reason, the local milk authorities were always fighting against its availability. I also consumed cream, I consumed carrot juice, mixed those two together, a lot of neat things, grass-fed beef, etc., and I remember struggling. I was living in a motorhome, no generator, just a cooler with ice. Literally every 2 days I had to get my food, and I depended on that food. I could see I was getting better, and I needed it. One day I couldn't find the dairy products that I needed to be healthy, and I arrived at the health food store too late. I couldn't risk it. I was completely out. My cooler was empty, and I stood there in front of the door seeing that the health food store was closed, and I decided to kill two birds with one stone. I actually spent the night in the health food store parking lot so I'd be first in line the next day. And I got there. Matthew, the dairy guy who had known me pretty well, knew that if he had what I needed, I'd be happy. If he didn't, I'd be sad, and I'd start a search all over San Diego County. So I walked into the store. He gave me a thumbs up, grabbed my 8 quarts of kefir. I walked out content for another 2 days, and I made a commitment. I was 20 years old. I said, I don't know how and I don't know when, but I'm going to have a hand in raising and growing the world's healthiest foods, because I will never go without this again. I'm now going to be well and have a family, and they will never go without it. And I'm going to tell people about my testimony, and they will need it. And I made that commitment then 18 years ago, and today, where I sit, I can look out the window and see cows, chickens, sheep, goats, wow, and all kinds of other things, bees, etc., trees, orchards. I'm living the dream that God gave me. Now, for many people, they'd say, well, my dream is to own a yacht or a really big house and live in Florida. Yeah, I had that, but I came to Missouri for a bigger dream, and part of that is to raise and grow some of the world's healthiest foods. I love supplements, Ben. I formulated over 100 supplements. Many are bestsellers worldwide. However, supplements are in addition to.
Right.
And I decided that I would help create and really grow and raise from the ground up foods and beverages that stimulate the body to regenerate and be well. And I'm sitting amidst 4,000 acres right now with a state-of-the-art yet old-school processing center, watching as we do everything from start to finish and deliver products that I believe can transform lives no matter what your age, no matter what your condition. And what's great is people can be skeptical about supplements, but when it comes to foods and beverages,
right,
the concerns, even the blinders seem to come off. And so
That's
we're
right.
doing things today that I have dreamed about over the last decades, and it's exciting, and we're really excited also, Ben, to bring some of these products to your listeners and to the greater Youngevity family.
And I'm very excited as well. Let's talk dairy, Jordan, because I think, is it fair to say that that's the core of your food philosophy, is the power of dairy? Is that a fair statement?
It is, and growing up as a vegan, like my dad and my mom were in naturopathic school, and everything was plant foods. In fact, I didn't have my first animal food, of course, after breastfeeding, till I was 4.5, and I literally avoided dairy like the plague. It was almond milk, it was soy milk, it was all these imitation milks. However, I realized in getting well that the right kind of dairy, which is very hard to find, actually is the most perfect food for humans no matter what age. And people will argue and say, well, we're the only species that eats dairy after we're weaned. Well, I could make an argument, as I've seen 10 species of animals drink milk on my property and watch them come back to life. I can tell you that humans are the only species that Skypes and sends text messages. I don't think that's really a good analogy. We've been consuming dairy, some of the healthiest cultures in the world, for thousands of years. But you know what? In America, Ben, in Europe, and even in Australia, we consume the wrong kind. And I've spent the last 5 years creating the right kind, and we have stopped at nothing to do so.
Now, when you say the right kind, you're referring to, I think you're referring to the protein fractions and the changes, the different kinds of protein fractions as they have to do with the types of cows that are producing them, correct?
Absolutely. In fact, for years, I promoted goat's milk. I promoted sheep's milk. In fact, I was probably the largest promoter of those alternate dairy products. The problem is people don't like the taste of goat's milk. And in fact, we were driving from Florida to Missouri, and yesterday my third son, I gave him, he's 6, I gave him some goat milk yogurt, and he barely took a bite of it. We ran out of Amasi, which is our cultured dairy product. And I can tell you goat milk has its problems. You can't find it organic. They're not grass-fed. Sheep's milk's wonderful, but it's in short supply, and again, you can't find it organic, typically not grass-fed. And so the cow is the perfect animal to produce milk. The problem is we used the wrong cow until we found the right cow. And what happened, Ben, is we looked back through history and realized that out of the ruminant animals, goats, sheep, cows, deer, etc., that cows are the only one that have 2 species, not breeds, but species. The original cow and the modern cow that you see parachuting into stadiums in a Chick-fil-A commercial. The modern cow has a protein that has been called the devil in the milk and could be 13 times worse than gluten. But we bred that out of our herd. This is not genetic manipulation. It's selective breeding. And we produce dairy that people will say, Ben, that you've healed my relationship with dairy. They just love it. Now, we don't sell just straight up milk. I don't believe in skim milk. We sell a cultured dairy product called Amasi that I believe is 17 ways better than the yogurt and kefir you're getting from health food stores. I could fill a whole show with just its benefits, but more than anything, if you want to know where your food comes from, if you want to boost your digestion, support immune system health, build strong bones, and get a wonderful source of CLA and omega-3s, our Amasi has been nourishing children and adults for the last nearly 3 years, and many cannot and will not live without it.
And this is a dairy product that typically that people who have dairy allergies or problems with dairy should have no problem with.
Well, I can never say that unequivocally because there's people that are sensitive to water. But I believe that if you are going to tolerate a dairy product, that this is the one for you. And almost everyone who's consumed it has not only tolerated it, but it's made a big difference in their health. We've just heard amazing results from what it has done, supporting skin health, brain health, helping, of course, with digestion. And really, there's a lot of kids now, especially those who drink a lot of juices, sodas, eat a lot of processed foods, that are really in a failure to thrive situation and looking to get growth hormone injections, et cetera. This food nourishes you to the core. And I talked to a good friend of mine, Ben, who's a gastroenterologist, and we co-wrote several books together. Talked to him yesterday about doing some research in collaboration, and he said, Jordan, that Amasi you have, and this guy can eat like you wouldn't believe. He eats a 48-ounce steak and uses the T-bone to floss with afterwards. I mean, he's just a machine, runs marathons, triathlete, and he said, after drinking that Amasi, I could barely eat dinner. It nourishes you to the core. It's amazing.
That is awesome. So in other words, when you talk about food being medicine, you are really serious. This stuff is medicinal as well as nutritional. Is that correct?
I believe so, but you got to try it for yourself.
I definitely want to hear about the Amasi and a couple other of your products, and I also want to know how our listeners can get a hold of some of these products, Jordan. So hang tight. We got one more segment to go. We're talking to Dr. Jordan Rubin. Jordan, you are listening to The Bright Side on the Genesis Communication Network. Like an icon. We'll be back after this.
Don't go away.
In the sense of the Bible, it's milk and honey, right? In essence.
Well, it's certainly the milk part, and we have several flavors, including one that's milk and honey. But this really came, the inspiration came from the Kenyan Maasai tribe. And if you read about them, they are one of the most successful, healthy, and militaristically dominating tribes in all of Africa.
And they're milk drinkers.
They are. The 90% of their diet is dairy, and they believe that God gave them the rights to all cattle. And so let me just share something with you. Not only do they run fast and jump high, but their rite of passage, when they turn 14, the males have to get circumcised at 14 and then kill a lion with an instrument that they make or their bare hands. I mean, I don't know about you, but
that's some bad
going into a freshman year of high school or your bar mitzvah or whatever seems like a little easier to me. So, and they drink this amazing beverage. I learned about it in 2006. It comes from special cows, and it's a special process. And I committed 8 years ago that I would bring it to America. It's not yogurt. It's not kefir. It is the one and only Amasi, or as you pronounced it, Amasai. And it really is so much more than a food.
And now tell me about it. Why is it not kefir? Why is it not yogurt? It's fermented dairy, right? What's the difference?
It is. Well, there's several reasons. First of all, let me just say that the cows are unique. They don't have that offending protein, the A1 beta casein. And just so you know, either does mother's milk. So this is not introducing a foreign protein into the body like most cow's milk. 99.9% of it does. Number two, it's certified organic. Number three, it is 100% pasture consuming, or we call green fed. No grain, no nothing. We produce about 65% less milk per cow. We raise the calf on mama cows. We don't dehorn. We don't vaccinate. We don't castrate bulls. I mean, you would just flip if you saw what even organic dairies are doing today. But what makes Amasi unique and not yogurt and kefir is the probiotic cultures, very similar to what I used when I was in California. These cultures are hardy. You can actually take our dairy products and put them in hot soup, and this powerful probiotic will still survive. And more than that, it contains dozens of probiotics. The protein is intact. It takes us 180 times longer to process this product. We culture it for more than 20 hours. And here's another crazy tidbit of info. If you consume a cup set yogurt, like out of the plastic cup,
right,
those yogurts actually ferment in the cup, which means you're putting warm or hot milk into plastic. And as many of us know, that ain't good. There was a little bit of country slang for you. We do it right. We do it ourselves, and there's nothing like it.
So you're doing this from cows to bottle on your farm?
We do it from soil to bottle. I mean, we literally have planted seeds for the right annual and perennial grasses. We have tried our best to steward over the soil. We call our process of farming ecological regeneration. We are building topsoil. We are creating a breed of animals that is resistant. I'm excited, Ben. You know why right now? Because my chickens are running around and I don't feed them a thing, and they are producing eggs. How? They're going and eating what they're supposed to eat.
Wow.
Maybe they don't produce as many eggs, but other than having a wood-built movable chicken coop and buying those chickens, they are producing food from the environment, and it's an awesome thing. And that's what we do with all of our animals, and it's something that you don't get today. If I asked you, where does your food come from? How many people know?
I have no idea. No idea.
Exactly. And it was never that way. This is only the last 50, 60 years since the Industrial Revolution. Things have changed, and not all for the best.
I want some Amasai. How do I get it? What do I do?
Well, first of all, you mentioned my new book. It's called The Maker's Diet Revolution. And I would say the best way to learn about what we do at Beyond Organic is to connect with your website, Ben. And I believe that any day now, the listeners today at Youngevity and all the people surrounding that will be able to get these great products. If you want more information right now, you can visit livebeyondorganic.com, but make sure when you're ready to make your selection that you check in with Ben's website and phone number, etc. But we have great information. We have a great magazine. My brand new book tells in-depth information about all these products, and we are working very hard to get these to the masses. We have a vision to see 1 million people live beyond organic by 2020. We call that our 2020 vision. And Ben, I appreciate you helping us accomplish that.
I am such a big fan. I can't tell you, and I'm 100%, 110% on board. Is the new book describes all the products, the Maker's Diet?
And more than that, it really talks talks about some often forgotten or misunderstood principles of medicine. I'm going to tell you in the book, while the most famous scientist in the world, Louis Pasteur, may have had it completely wrong, we're going to talk about a substance that was so beneficial that in Switzerland in the 1700s, 150 spas and clinics opened up just to feed people this beverage. You're going to learn about the power of fermentation. We're going to talk about a diet that can help you transform your body, mind, and spirit in just 10 days. All of that is available from the Maker's Diet Revolution book, and you're going to learn about the inspiration behind the way that we farm and Amasi and our other great products.
I want to hear about the cheese. We only got about a minute or two, but for our cheese lover friends, including myself, tell us about the cheese a little bit.
We make an amazing certified organic, grass-fed, farmstead, artisanal, probiotic-infused, A1 beta casein-free
awesome.
cheese selection. It is the finest cheese you've ever had, and it's like a powerful nutritional boost in every bite. You can make probiotic pizza with it. Each ounce is infused with powerful probiotics, an ingredient and nutrient that you need called vitamin K2. It just is amazing, and it is a great representation of the ecosystem that is healthy for us. It actually, in my opinion, Ben, helps people get exposed to a healthy environment because it is all raw and it captures the exact day, the exact moment, the exact climate from which the cows are living. That's what cheese is, stored milk for when it's too cold to milk and there's no grass. And we have it, and we have it better than anyone else.
And you're not talking cheese substitute here. You're talking real cheese. Tastes like cheese.
This is real cheese like you haven't had in your whole life. It is amazing. Jack, cheddar, Havarti. We have these amazing raw cheddar curds, which most people have never had anything like it. This is a daily high protein, high omega-3, CLA nutritional boost, 25 to 30% of your daily calcium needs in 1 ounce. It's like one glass of milk, but far better from the right cows, from our farm to your family.
Now, I know you mentioned Weston Price a lot, several times I've noticed in your books. What's your take on, have you interacted with the Weston Price Foundation with any of this stuff?
Oh, I have. Well, years ago, we were probably the biggest driver for membership for that foundation. But even better than interacting with the foundation, I've retraced many of the steps of Dr. Price, including going to the Locento Valley in Switzerland to learn about dairy products because they celebrated dairy and lived long lives. I visited a cemetery to see how long people lived at the end of the 1800s to see if Dr. Price was right, and I will tell you he was. And it was a lot of inspiration there for me to deliver to you what I'm talking about today. But Dr. Price was definitely and is a nutritional hero, and he believes that fat-soluble vitamins and minerals, which our raw cheese and our Amasi and all of our products have, were absolutely paramount to excellent health.
That's awesome. Jordan, it's been such a pleasure having you on. I hope you'll come on again. I didn't even scratch the surface of stuff I want to talk about with you.
I'd love to come back. We should do this more often. There's a lot of exciting things to talk about that most people are disconnected from. Farming is our heritage, but it could also be our future if we understand its importance. And so I'd love to get back on and share that with your listeners.
Oh, thank you so much, Jordan. God bless you for your work. It's wonderful. Sum up everything in one sentence that you want our listeners to know, because we're just flat out of time.
Bottom line, folks, food is your future. What you do today, what you eat, drink, and supplement with today is who you are tomorrow. And bottom line, there's no incurable disease. Anyone who is listening to my voice can be more than a conqueror if you follow these principles that have healed people for thousands of years.
Thank you so much, Jordan. The book is The Maker's Diet Revolution, in addition to The Maker's Diet and Patient Heal Thyself and all his other fine books. Thank you so much, Jordan. Thank you for your work. I'm a big fan, I got to tell you, and I'm 110% in your corner. We'll talk again soon, buddy. Take care, man.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Okay, God bless. That was Jordan Rubin, man. That guy is a nutritional hero, if ever there was one, and I highly encourage you guys to check out his book, The Maker's Diet, as well as The Maker's Diet Revolution, and I'm very, very proud to say that Youngevity will be featuring many of Jordan's products, the Amasi, the Swear V, and I think hopefully the cheese as well. We'll get Jordan back on again, hopefully in the near future.